Hey, today I'm in Melbourne, Florida. Now 60 years ago, Melbourne wasn't much different than any other town in America. I mean, sure, it had its share of small crime, this and that. But on the morning of December 9th, 1955, any innocence that Melbourne held was pretty much lost. Well, today I'm standing here in Melbourne. Right behind me is US 1, where you see the traffic. And to my right, along this way, is Palmetto Avenue. And that is Brownlee's funeral home, which has been here for quite a few decades, right across the street from Palmetto here. Well, on that December morning, in this area, general location, just off of Palmetto, on the south side of Palmetto here, was a 55 Chevrolet convertible. It was a cream color with a red trim, and inside it was the owner on the floorboard covered with blood. It was Patricia Van Eeghen. She was 29 years old and apparently very bloody due to a sharp, heavy object taken to her skull. Well, after making that discovery, you can imagine their reluctance to open the trunk of that car. And every fear they had came true when they opened up that trunk. And they found Patricia's daughter, 7-year-old daughter, Phyllis, in the trunk, also dead, also bloody, with apparently a blunt object to her head as well. So now Melbourne went into a panic, and really this made national news all over the country, because at that time, nobody kills little children. And apparently it seemed to be someone probably related to them both. Now the Van Eeghens lived very close to the proximity where they found this car, just down the street off of Strawbridge. Now the Van Eeghens lives right in this general area. That's Trinity Towers East right behind me. So right in that parking area, somewhere in front of that building, even as far as where I'm at, is where their home would have been. Now I have a partial video of their house, and it's the only one that I know of, and I'll show you that. Now, if you notice in that photo, if you look in the back porch, you can see a tricycle. Now I'm assuming that was used by Phyllis, maybe, but it also could have been used by Roger, who was her 4-year-old brother that 16 months earlier, before these murders, he tragically died in an accident by getting himself hit in the head with a swing at a park. There's also a word that maybe he fell from the tree. Now obviously after these murders, people started speculating, well, maybe it was no accident at all when Roger died. Well, once the funerals took place, Patricia and Phyllis joined their brother at the Melbourne cemetery. All three of them actually in an unmarked grave. Now, that was not the end of the Van Eeghen family, however. There was one person left. There was the husband, and there was the father, Philip Van Eeghen. And obviously, that's where they focused their attention on. And I'm sure, after they questioned him for hours and hours, the home that was once here was a focal point where they did a lot of investigating. But after talking to him for hours and investigating the property, there was somewhere else that got their attention. That was just down around the corner, and that was where he worked, and that was Van's Laundry. Well, right here I'm at the corner of Morningside Drive and Hibiscus Boulevard. This building is where they migrated to after leaving the home. This is where the investigators really started searching very closely and coming up with lots of evidence that something bad might have happened here. Well, anyway, we're here. This is actually the original building where Van's Laundry was. And this is where the investigators really were led to and found quite a few things we'll talk about that kept them here throughout the rest of the investigation. Now the door right here is another business. Back in the day though, when Philip was here working with his mother, the door was back here in the northwest corner was the opening. And I'll show you a picture or a photo. You can compare that. Anyway, I'll compare that photo and you can very easily see the comparisons. So right over here, by the gutter, just to the right, is where the original door was. Now 60 years ago, none of this concrete was here. I have an old photo of the investigators searching right here to my right on the ground. Now this is Florida. You've got sand, you got dirt, you got all kinds of weeds, and you have sand spurs, which is, you know, those little round things with all the barbs that get on your shoes or in your feet if you're barefooted. Well, as they were walking around here, I can imagine them comparing notes, talking all around this property, and maybe taking a little rest to get the sand spurs off their shoes and off their pants. As they're talking, they're taking them off, and they realize something very strange is going on. All the sand spurs were covered in blood. Well, as soon as they saw the sand spurs, it didn't take long to realize they found their crime scene right here at Van's Laundry, and there's only one person in their mind it could have been, and that was Philip Van Eeghen. Well, the murder trial for Philip Van Eeghen resulted in a hung jury in the murder of his wife. But he was given second-degree murder for the murder of Phyllis' 7-year-old daughter. He was sent to Rayford Prison for 20 years to life. Now, he came up for parole in 1970, and he was denied parole. But 2 years later, he escaped prison. And he actually was on the run for 8 years. And during that time, he even remarried. Now, he was recaptured in 1980, but remarkably, he was given parole, a full parole, in 1981. And then a few years later, in 1984, he was deported to his native Canada, where he went and never came back to the States. Well, years later, former Melbourne Police Lieutenant Bobby Bowen contacted local cemetery supply owner J.R. Williford about getting these graves marked here at the Melbourne Cemetery. J.R. very kindly donated his time and money and efforts and had headstones put on each of the 3 graves of the victims here at the Melbourne Cemetery, where they're permanently and respectfully represented now forever. But before they put them in the ground, Mr. Bowen wanted to let one more person know of his intentions. And when he did let him know, he got a very wholehearted thank you from Philip Van Eeghen. Well, I really want to thank local historian and author Anne Rayleigh-Follott for really unselfishly loaning me all of her resources that she has spent hours and hours and days and weeks researching this whole case. If you want to look more into it, there's far more that I've covered here that only she can probably cover. So I just want to thank her for all the photos she loaned me. Much of the information in this video came directly from her, and I couldn't have done it without her, so I really appreciate that. So if you have any thoughts, any comments, anything to add, please do so below. Make sure you share it on Facebook. Others may see it that it may relate to that you don't even realize. So I really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.